Blade, and I am the editor, creator, and producer of what you're watching right now, Blade Talk. If you are new here, welcome, and you found this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. Always appreciate all the support that I am given. So today I want to go over and answer some questions that were in my email. I'm sorry I can't get to all of your questions, but I thought I'd do a presentation and answer 5 for this month, and then I'll do another 5, maybe even 10 next month. So without further ado, let's get into some of the questions that you all have asked me. Let's begin. Alright, so before we begin, did you all peek the new specs I'm rocking? Yeah, it was time for an eye exam, so I had to change my frames. Put in the comment section down below if you think they look good on me. That being said, let's get into some questions. First question, hi Blade, can you break down the 3 major movements of Judaism? So this is a question that I get asked often, never gets old, and I recognize that I have new subscribers, so I have no problem answering this question. And I'll give you the self-definition of each movement. Let's begin with Orthodoxy. I was a member of the Orthodox movement actually before I maneuvered into conservative Judaism. Orthodoxy self-definition is it believes it is true to the Torah that God gave Moses thousands of years ago, and authoritative interpretation of the rabbis of that Torah, which essentially are untouched by history. They live above history, so the decision of the authoritative rabbi today was in some sense either literally known or in theory known to Moses thousands of years ago. The words in the Torah are literally what God spoke. Maybe not in the way that I'm speaking to you now, but in some sense, the words in the Torah are what God meant it to be. Right? Orthodoxy takes a very literal approach to Torah. They view halakha or Jewish law as binding, and it cannot change whatsoever. The conservative movement, to which I belong to now, believes that the tradition grows and changes. It is decided by the community of devoted Jews, and that community itself grows and changes. History has a very profound impact in the way that people see themselves, their community, and that therefore the Torah has to constantly be subject to the interpretation that takes into account what we know about the world that we live in today that our ancestors did not. And as far as halakha, we believe that halakha should and always has been able to adapt. For example, in the area or status of women, Orthodoxy holds that women can't be in positions of leadership, whereas the conservative movement, we recognize that in today's society, women are no longer property, and they should be able to teach Torah. They should be able to become rabbis because there's nothing in Torah that says that they can't. So that's one of the big differences between conservative Judaism and Orthodox Judaism. And it's not about being right or wrong. This is just different interpretations. And then there's the Reform movement, which places emphasis primarily on individual choice and individual liberty. It also tends to have a strong social justice and progressive political orientation. It sees the Torah as a man-made document that has some good things in it as far as ethically, and halakha is not binding. So whereas the conservative movement believes that halakha has to be able to adapt, the Orthodox movement believes that Halakha is ironclad. It cannot adapt, can't change, etc. The Reform movement essentially states that do what's best for you. You can believe it, you cannot believe it. It's completely up to you. So they put emphasis on you make the decision. So the big major differences between the three movements are in the area of how you interpret Jewish law. Do you believe that Jewish law is unchanging? It's binding and it can never change or adapt to anything? Or do you believe that, yes, we need to follow Jewish law, but it has to be able to adapt to the times that we're living in? Or do you place it on the individual? That is the difference between the essential three movements. Next question. Hey Blade, is Judaism dying? As I look at the numbers, it seems Jews are getting smaller and smaller in terms of population and observance level. Do you think Judaism will still be here in a century? I believe that in today's society, you have more, with this new generation coming, more selfish individuals than there has ever been. I'm not talking in terms of just religion. If you look at the organizations that require you to follow a certain rules, guidelines, children today aren't really enthusiastic about following anyone else's authority but their own. So if you look at the military, for example, children aren't joining the military anymore. As a whole, the numbers are down. If you look at religion, the numbers are down. Children aren't as interested anymore. And that comes from a selfish mindset. They don't want to follow anyone else's authority but their own. And ultimately it's sad because the world is bigger than just your individual set of principles or what you want. It's about doing something for someone else. As far as Judaism in particular, there was a professor at Brandeis named Simon, brilliant philosopher. He wrote an essay called Israel, the Ever-Dying People. He quotes Jews in every generation that have made the statement that we're the last, after us there aren't going to be any more, etc., etc. I personally think that Judaism is going through an interesting and sometimes painful transformation. What it'll look like in 100 years from now, I don't know. What I do know is that no one would have predicted 100 years ago where Judaism is today. I try to stay out of the prophet business, right? For me to presume that this tradition going back thousands of years and this complex land of America where I live is going to fade away would be pessimistic. And I like to look at myself as not necessarily optimistic, but hopeful, a hopeful individual. I believe that, Judaism will be around for quite some time. And in terms of America specifically, I believe that what will happen to Jews in America has more to do with what will happen to America than what will happen to the Jews that are living in America. If you would have asked a Jew in Germany in the 1900s, what would Judaism look like in 50 years? They would take a look at their community and they would have ultimately gotten it wrong. I assume Judaism will survive. The Torah states that Jews will always be bouncing around. In what way? I don't know. I don't think that it's going to look the same. Like I said, that's why I joined the conservative movement, because I feel like it accurately portrays the Jewish identity throughout our history. It constantly evolves. I believe we'll be here, but in what way? Maybe there'll be some new traditions that are adopted. Who knows? It won't look the same, is what I'll tell you. But I do believe that will always be here. Hope that answers the question. Next question. Do you believe the battle between the religious aspect of Judaism and the cultural aspect of Judaism will ever be reconciled? I think there will always be people who love being Jewish but don't have a religious orientation or a religious feeling. And many of them will still make amazing, fantastic contributions to Judaism. If you look at Theodor Herzl, he was not a religious Jew at all. But the contribution that he made to the Jewish people, the Jewish tradition, is unparalleled. I believe that any wise person, or even rabbi, has to see things from both sides. There's a passage in the Talmud about an impure animal. It's called a sheret. It's basically a lizard. In the Talmud, it states someone who can't give you 70 reasons why this impure animal is pure shouldn't be a rabbi. In other words, if you can't argue the contrary of what it is you know to be true, then you don't have the intellectual agility to be a rabbi, which means that you are trained in some sense to see both sides. That's what makes an amazing rabbi an amazing rabbi. It's what makes a wise individual, your ability to see both sides. If you have an empathetic heart, then you realize that it is pretty rare that something is so clearly black and white that you can't imagine the other side. Honestly, this goes back to why I left Orthodoxy. It is almost the arrogance that I felt. You have to be able to see the other side. You don't have to agree with it, but be a free thinker. Right? When it comes to cultural Judaism versus religious Judaism, I've seen and studied both sides. I will say that personally, I'm both. And for me, it's my culture. I like to eat Jewish dishes. I love praying in Hebrew. I support Israel. I listen to some of the music. It is my culture. It is my heritage. And at the same time, I'm also religiously a Jew in a sense that I believe in the divinity of the Torah and that we are able to get closer to the divine, to have a connection with him. I think that cultural and religious Judaism are two sides of the same coin. One doesn't really exist without the other, in my opinion. If you're a religious Jew, then you are involved in Jewish culture. If you're a cultural Jew, then you have to acknowledge that even if you don't believe in God, the foundation of Judaism itself does. At its core, Judaism believes in God. I reject the ignorance of when people take a tradition of thousands of years old of devotion and brilliance and exploration of life and meaning, and it gets reduced to, I'm just doing this to make my family happy. I'm just cultural, because you're ignoring a whole side of Judaism that truly is beautiful. Hope that answers the question. Next question. Hey Blade, do you view Jews assimilating to modern societies as a bad thing? Honestly, yes. There are some that have stated that, well, people use assimilation as if it would be the worst thing in the world for Jews. And for me personally, honestly, I think it would be. And I'll explain why. If you look at the United States of America, for example, what makes us unique? What makes the United States of America unique or special or great? Is it because we're nicer than other people elsewhere? No. Is it because we have a great constitution? No. There are many countries that have great constitutions, but horrible, tyrannical governments. It's because elsewhere in the world you had Germans and then you had Jews. You had Hungarians and then you had Jews. Jews were always the identifiable other. In America, you don't have that. You have this salad of groups, if you will. You have Koreans, Africans, Jews, Hindus, Protestants, Catholics, etc. There aren't Americans and then there are Jews. Some Jews want to be like everyone else because they don't want to deal with the struggles that come along with being Jewish. But in truth, the grass isn't greener on the other side. Every culture has their own unique struggle in America. Religious Christians are struggling to keep young people interested in the belief system. Black people are struggling, holding ourselves accountable, finding our identity as a whole. Hispanics struggle with trying to adapt to American culture. Native Americans struggle with keeping their tradition alive from when European settlers came. White people struggle with how to have pride in themselves that doesn't come off as offensive or racist to other minorities because of their history. You know, it's easy for someone that is black to shout black power or black slogans, etc., etc. But if a white person says white power, it's seen as racist, offensive to some. Every culture has their own struggles that come along with it. The big thing with assimilation is it strips you of your identity. If you think that the whole world should be the same, then yes, assimilation sounds great. But imagine if vanilla was the only flavor. It was the only flavor. I believe to resist being like everyone else is actually a good thing, even though from most of history or even now, it's seen as a bad thing. Everybody wants to be like everyone else, you know, and I think that that's wrong. I think it's our diversity that makes us unique, that makes us great. So Jews have stubbornly held on to their Jewishness in the face of Muslims, in the face of Christians, and Persians, and Nazis, and Romans, and et cetera, et cetera. And that is what is beautiful to me. They are my heroes because some of them paid the ultimate price for being so stubborn. But those are my heroes personally. Now, for you to come along and give up the tradition when our ancestors faced death to preserve our tradition seems irresponsible to me. I have my own holidays, my own traditions, my own calendar, etc. And I'm not interested in giving up this amazing tradition just to fit in or to have people like me. I am not someone that desires to be liked, especially by strangers. I don't seek validation from other people. I could care less if someone likes me or dislike me. As long as you don't disrespect me, we're fine. Everyone is going to have their own opinion, and their opinions of you is none of your business, nor should you make it yours. I think that it kills joy when you think about what other people think about you. Personally, I don't care. I care about how my daughter views me as a father, how my mother views me as a son, how my rabbi views me as a Jew. But the rest of it, and strangers, and it's crazy the world that we're living in. We always, as human beings, we always wanted to be liked. It's a human nature. But now we want to be liked by complete strangers. Now we want to be liked by over 1 million people. Now we seek validation from complete strangers, and we want a bunch of them. We used to just want to be liked by certain individuals. It's sad. So, yes, I believe assimilating is a bad thing because I don't believe in giving up your tradition just to run away from the struggles and strife that we face. And at the same time, I don't believe that you should give up a rich culture and heritage just to appease somebody else or just to be liked by someone else. Hope that answers the question. Last one. What is your view of the afterlife? Do you personally believe in heaven and hell? And what is your view on God? So I'll start with my view on God. I explained it to my daughter like this. She's 14 years old. Imagine when you were 2 years old. Can a 2-year-old imagine what it's like to be 14? No. Not only can they not imagine what a 14-year-old is like, but they can't even imagine what it is that they can't grasp. The distance between us and God is infinitely greater than the distance between the 2-year-old and the 14-year-old. I don't even begin to know what God is like. I do believe that God laid out the instructions for us in His Torah that allows us to reach a certain level of connection with Him. I tell people that I'm not following the Torah just because God said so. I'm following the Torah because it will help me unlock my purpose, and it works. A society can function off of the laws of the Torah, whereas a society can't function off of, for example, atheism. Because in atheism, everybody has their own subjective view of what's good and what's bad. As for heaven and hell, I don't believe in hell. I do believe that you get punished for things you did in this world, but I don't believe in an eternal place of fire and brimstone and dragons and all that stuff. No, I don't believe in that. I do believe in heaven and angels, but I believe that it's just a different realm. I think that sometimes God chooses certain humans to maybe get a glimpse of another realm. And I think that some angels are chosen to get a glimpse of ours. I don't believe that when we die, we go to heaven and listen to harp music, because that will be hell. Right? I don't believe that I don't even like harp music, so that will be hell for me. I believe that there's an essence to human beings that is eternal. I believe that when we die, we go into a state of sleep until the resurrection takes place. And this isn't coming from the Torah or the Kabbalah. This is just my personal opinion or my personal belief. I believe that we'll be resurrected and we'll wake up and we will be immortal here on earth, just as it was intended with Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden. We are sent to repair this world, and each of us has a role to play in it. Once our role is done, we enter a deep sleep and wait to be awakened to a beautiful world. No war, no illness, no death, just a beautiful world. I believe we will do things as humans do. We'll eat, have sex, and, argue from time to time, and, have families, etc. And me personally, I don't care much for being an angel with wings on a cloud. Hashem made me a human, which I believe personally is superior to an angel because we have free will. Why would I want to downgrade? I like thinking for myself. I like learning new skills, seeing sunrises and sunsets, enjoying cheesecake, traveling the world, etc. I think we will all come back and we'll get to meet our ancestors. Our ancestors will get to meet us. I think that we'll exchange in dialogue, and all of us will know God. All of us. And we will all adhere to the Torah, albeit with different traditions that have formed, but it'll be beautiful. So you'll get to meet, your ancestors. You get to meet Dr. King and George Washington and other famous individuals and exchange in dialogue and learn. And this place will be the same as it was intended in the Garden of Eden. That's personally what I believe. We're meant to be human, and I love being human. And if you look at the way things are happening, it's kind of like a cycle. In the beginning of the Torah, you read that Adam lived to be over 900 years old. The life expectancy was very long. Then the flood came, and it was very short. And now if you look at life now, it's starting to get long again. And I personally believe that the world is actually getting better. I don't buy into the narrative that the news is pushing, that everything is just going to hell and whatnot. People don't look at things the same anymore. Whereas at one point in time, Vladimir Putin, for example, the president of Russia, invaded Ukraine. He will be praised for that. People used to praise that tough, that arrogance, and that bully mentality. People aren't doing that anymore. He's not going to be praised when he's done, and he has to manipulate his country in order to get them to praise him. As a whole, people don't like bullies anymore. I mean, the way that we care about human life now, the way that we take mental health serious now, I think that the world is getting better and is starting to be repaired, contrary to what people say. But understand that it is the bad things and the horror stories that get the most views, that garners the most clicks. So if you understand that algorithm, then you understand that when you watch the news, it always has something negative. Such and such somebody was murdered. Now, of course, I'm not denying that murders aren't taking place, and my heart goes out to those losing their lives and their families and whatnot. But I notice that the news only covers the bad things. This person was murdered, but nobody was born. It's the bad things and the drama that essentially sells, that gets views, that gets clicks. Positive news and positive posts don't typically get clicks or views. So you're being trained to pay attention to just the negative. But I personally believe we're on the road to going back to the Garden of Eden, which is where I believe that we will be. When we resurrect, that'll be where we are. I mean, things are not as bad as they used to be at all. Yeah, there's still evil. Yes, there's still racism. Yes, there's still anti-Semitism. But there was a time where you would get killed just for being black or being Jewish, and nobody would bat an eye. You were, handicapped or disabled, you were sacrificed. You were killed because you weren't productive to society. If you were a woman, you were seen as property. Look how far we've come. So I pay attention to both sides. I'm not oblivious to what's going on in terms of the negative, but I always make sure that I also put in positivity into my mind as well to counterbalance that bad. Most people just put in the bad, and then they want, marriages are going to hell and the world is going to hell and everybody's killing everybody and everybody, because that's what you choose to ingest in your mind. And so now you have a warped view of what the world essentially looks like. That's my personal take. Thank you all so much for submitting your questions. And I'll leave my email down in the description. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask, and I'll try to get to them as I do these question and answer sessions. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Blade Talk. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and until next Sunday and the next episode, thank you all so much for supporting me. You all take care. Shavua Tov.